to keep coming back to you on now changing tack, a new report by tax and auditing company Ernst & Young, that of course is also known as EY, shows a rise in cases of fraud over the last 1 year, signaling weakness in systems in various organizations. The report goes on to add that bribery and corruption remains a challenge and that business conduct is under greater scrutiny from both regulators and the public than ever before. Now, of course, this is against the background of a lot of things we've had in the past. Globally, the Enron crisis, of course, brought on by what you may call a crisis in governance. Locally here, we've had about different companies that have gone through tribulations because of various initiatives, various underhand dealings within those companies. We've seen recently allegations that a young man was able to get away with about 4 billion shillings from the Kenya Revenue Authority. All these in a nutshell point to just one thing. Well, a crisis in ethics, a crisis in governance. And to try and, well, provide leadership in this front, Ernst & Young, a global consulting, put together a report that we now want to take apart here in studio just to, well, provide some insights for you. And with me in studio to talk a bit about that is Dennis Moshiri. He is the Fraud Investigations and Dispute Service Lead for EY here in East Africa. Karibu sana.
Thank you, Peter, for having me.
Yeah, so this new report that has been put out today sets a picture of essentially a world in sort of in crisis, especially with the rise of technology, the changes in society. We're now seeing a lot of things that would point to lack of the ethics that would have governed businesses in the past. Why do you think this is the case today?
So it's an interesting question you asked. So our survey that was conducted, across 41 countries,
yes,
and having interviewed taken 4,100 interviews thereabout, we found some very interesting insights around the area of fraud, corruption, and bribery. So, but just before I talk about bribery, fraud and corruption,
yes,
one of the things that has come as a key theme in our survey is that today's business are operating in very uncertain economic, environment. We've seen a lot of political, upheavals and political challenges facing businesses, and we've also seen popular discontent with globalization for many companies. So these challenges for business are compounded by the fact that fraud and corruption is very rife.
So when you say popular discontent, maybe you can just explain what that means.
So we've seen very, the electorate making decisions or making choices for leaders who are basically going against the establishment, so to speak. But the point I want to bring here is when you look at our survey results,
yes,
and you look at one of the questions we put across to our respondents,
yes,
how do they perceive the level of corruption and bribery in the organization? And an amazing 79% of respondents tell us bribery, corruption, and fraud is quite prevalent in their workplace. So an observation that we also extended further and found that the level of unethical conduct and practices is quite high. So you find across the markets that we surveyed, 77% of board members, senior managers are willing to enact, take underhand dealings to win business or to help a business survive.
Why is that the case, do you think?
It's interesting. It's a multiplicity of many issues. I mean, the environment which which businesses are being done. The propensity of employees willing to justify their unethical conduct. Case in point, when you look at our Generation Y cohort that is made up of employees aged between 25 and 34 years old, you look at that population and you find that 73% of respondents in that age group think that is okay to conduct and to get involved in unethical business practices to help a business survive economic hard times.
Yeah.
And actually, 68% of that cohort expect their leaders, expect their senior managers to engage in such practices.
And just to remind our viewers that Dennis Moshiri is from Ernst & Young. He is the Fraud Investigations Disputes Services Lead for East Africa. Just to tell you where we're coming from, because this is indeed something that is quite serious, especially the fact that these sorts of situations must put a lot of pressure on anyone who tends to try and do ethical business. So then what happens? Do we all say that we essentially will have to do business in that way?
Not exactly. So we moved on from making observation around the challenges that businesses are facing, and we looked at what attempts are being done, within or without the organization.
Yes.
And it's not all doom and gloom. If you look at a question like we asked our respondents, do they think that enforcement activity by regulators and law enforcement has had positive impact on the business? And we had a resounding response from our respondents within Africa continent and particularly in Kenyan environment. You found that the recent activity by regulators around the financial service industry has had a very good impact in terms of what our respondents think. The other thing that came out, and I think more can be done, our respondents told us, they say to us, prosecution of individuals and assigning individual accountability can go a long way towards carbon.
Just to stop you right there, because part of the challenge with these recommendations and these observations is the fact that at some point there is lack of capacity to even appreciate the sort of crimes and things that are going on. If we talk about things like hacking, very few companies, even globally, have the capacity to be able to tackle some of these global or even local hackers. In some places like here in Kenya, if it is simple accounting fraud, for example, some of it is so complicated and at such a high level that you literally have to have accountants and forensic auditors who are very well trained to be able to spot these and then at an even higher level provide this as evidence in court. How then do we go about tackling these issues?
So it's a very interesting dimension, and part of our survey focused on cyber risks in a big way.
Yes.
So just to bring it in perspective, so we asked a couple of questions to our respondents around the area of cyber fraud and cyber breaches.
Yes.
And you find that the risk is real. It's employees across various levels recognize the challenge that the companies face. So one of the things that we ask as subscribers is, do they think that companies need to invest in cyber breach response program? And we also ask a very related question. We ask them, have their company invested in that space? And the answer, you find a big disparity between where the companies should be and where they shouldn't be. So it's a big challenge. To your point, you talked about the challenges that exist around investigating, getting evidence and prosecuting. It's real. The capacity, I think, we have either within the organization or outside the organization, it's not at par with where, so to speak, where fraudsters are. So I guess the number of suggestion or recommendation we give out in our survey, and one of the key elements and one of the recommendations that we give is that companies need to focus more from a proactive basis more than from a reactive basis. So what do I mean by that? So you'll find that there's a lot of suspicious activities or behaviors by employees that companies proactively, by, for example, monitoring data and then doing forensic data analysis, in a proactive way, can help you detect some nuances and some signs or some not necessarily evidence, but you can be able to see some suspicious behavior by employee.
Yes.
The other area, obviously, as part of the recommendation is, they need to have, an updated cyber breach response program. We've looked at areas of how companies can invest in technology, the current technology, to protect and detect, fraud that happening in the digital space.
Well, in the face of all that, finally, what sort of lead and direction can EY make? Because you have all this information, you've been able to crunch this data. Can you be able to confidently say to companies that are looking for these sorts of solutions that you may be a one-stop shop for this sort of thing, that if they are then able to tap your expertise, we may not be seeing some of the things that were happening?
Absolutely. So it's an interesting landscape. We could talk about matters digital.
Yes.
So you find that you look at the level in which digital investment and digital technology is advancing. So you find more often than not, companies are playing catch up.
Yes.
So you look at the level of investment that needs to go to having a fully French digital forensic lab.
Yes.
It's the level of investment is big. And we're talking about companies are already facing a lot of challenges and headwinds to do their cost spending. So as consultants, EY, we've invested hugely in this space. And you look at our technology investment in the digital forensic space, be it the traditional computer forensic type of work or data analytics, which is actually the new frontier of investigating fraud.
Yes.
You find that professionals and consultants have done quite a number of strategic investment to be able to help their clients in terms of fight the challenges in the fraud challenges in the digital space.
Okay.
We don't expect our clients to invest much in that space.
Yes.
They've got other things that they need to focus on to generate revenue. So that's where we come in and together, it's a collaborative approach.
Finally, and very quickly, the fact that with devolution, we've taken a lot of money, huge chunks of cash to the counties. And of course, the fact that with the ever-improving penetration of internet in places like Kenya, these sorts of situations are going to occur more in the interior where there's very little or no capacity. So how then do we start to tackle these sorts of things as they emerge proactively?
Very good. So one of the biggest achievement, I think, if you like, if you look at the way the government expenditure has been monitored, and the aspirations of the government is to make sure to have systems that are able to help monitoring and evaluation of spending. So integrated finance management system. Well, a lot has been said about it. Well, but I think it's one of the strategic way done in the right way that can help the government, hold counties to account and be able to spend the budget, be able to monitor budgets and spendings.
Okay, thank you very much. You seem to be one of the few proponents of IFMI so far who've expressed confidence in the capacity of the software, but I know, of course, the proof of that pudding must be in the eating. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us.